Hello, everyone, and welcome to our Ywk Podcast. Today, I'm joined by Lara. We met at the Christian Resources Exhibition in Milton Keynes a few months ago. Lara's based here in Milton Keynes, same as me, and she started a side project called Curious Berries. And through that, she creates beautiful Christian resources for children, including books, toys, gifts. She's going to tell us a whole load more about that. And we're going to unpack a little bit more about her and what she does. But Lara, why don't you first off tell us what you do for your main job?
Yeah, of course, I do have a main job. Hi, everyone. My name is Lara. I'm an accountant. I'm a chartered accountant. I've been chartered for over 10 years now. Believe it or not, it seems very long. And that's all I wanted to do. Since when I was a child, I had uncles that were chartered accountants, and they inspired me as well as also like in numbers and accounting. That's my day job. I'm an accountant.
Yeah, great. So that's quite different from obviously what you do as your little side project.
Yeah.
How, when, and why did you start Curious Berries? Tell us the story behind that.
Yes. So I have two boys. I had my first son 2017. After I had him, as you know, you're raising your child, you're introducing them to lots of things, your favorite food, favorite songs, and things like that. And for me, one of the things I wanted to share with him was my faith. And so I started to look for resources to use to share my faith with him. And then I soon found that there were very little resources that included characters that looked like him. And the few that I did find, I would have to order from the US. Some of the ones I would find as well were not very durable. He could be quite rough with his books and toys. And so, he'll rip them apart, and he likes to engage with his books, as I used to say. And so that was kind of where the seed for, oh, okay, there's a gap here. Maybe it's something that, I should look into. But obviously, I was doing something completely different. And so I didn't think I was the one.
Yeah.
To fill that gap. But I thought it would be nice to do something because I was really surprised to find that that was the case, back then. So that was the genesis of, wanting to do something else. And then you further down, I started to pray about it and you search around, you look for like devotionals, I'll look for simple books, but there was just very little available. And one day I was going to this accounting job of mine on the train, and the story of a day in the life of a little boy, learning about creation through his everyday dropped in my heart. And it played over and over and over again. And I heard a voice say, write it down. And I thought, it's so simple. There's nothing to write here. But it was so strong that I had to get off my phone out. I'll never forget. And I eventually just scribbled the whole thing on my phone. And that's where the book was written, pretty much the whole thing. I edited it very slightly, but that was the book. But of course, I then sat on it for another 2 years or so.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's how, the brand wanting to do anything with this came about.
Yeah. And what resources have you created so far? So it started with that one book.
It started with that one book, Do You Know? So, that's the one about the day in life of a little boy. And since then, I've then done Bible cards, which is a bestseller. And that one is actually very special to me because I've done that in collaboration with my son, my director, as he calls himself. And so he's choosing the colors, he's giving feedback to illustrators. So that's a very special one for us. I also have Fruit of the Spirit resources, so posters, tags, puzzles, different things around the Fruit of the Spirit. And what else do I have? I have a wooden jigsaw puzzle set which says Who is God to me. Again, in fact, all the products have come from something I want to share with him, or now two boys, share with them, and then I look for something. I can't quite find what I want, and then, we go on to create something. So the puzzle, Who is God to me, again, wanting to share who God is and the different names you can call God or different experiences you could have in God. That's where that came from as well. We also have different other wall art, prayer wall art, affirmation wall art, painting kits. So yeah, we've created a growing range
Yeah.
of
Yeah.
resources as as they grow, each need, comes up, different stages as well. So
Yeah. And obviously at first you wanted to create it just for your son, for your boys. What was the thought behind obviously making it available to lots of
Everyone else.
people,
Yeah.
and what's the reception been like? What's
Yeah,
feedback
yeah.
have you had?
So it started with the one book. I remember once that book was then published, self-published, I shared it very nervously on Instagram. This was during COVID, and I remember literally physically trembling. Like this project I had been, hiding, so to speak. It
Yeah.
was finally going to be shared with the world. And the reception was amazing. I have to be really, really thankful. I remember even in sharing it, you are the light of the world and should not be hidden. And so in me sharing it, that was me just saying, okay, you know what? I'm doing this because I've written it for my son, but yes, God's still saying to share it with the world. And the reception was great. Lots of people related with the same needs that I had and also the lack of resources.
Yeah.
And people of different colors and races reached out to me, purchased, really supported me. And so that's where I guess that's the extra push I needed, or the confidence that actually, okay, yes, your son needs this and you've done it for your son as a gift to him, but other people need it as well. And I still thought it would just be the book. Like I said, the whole world of illustration published and all of that was so foreign.
Yeah.
After this labor of love that I had done, I thought, okay, it'll be a gift to my son, that'll be it. But I then had my second son, and with that, it seems like pregnancies just somehow do something for
Yeah.
me, or having kids. Because I remember this is now post having him, going back into work, and I started to think about, am I going to go back into work full time? This book I've written, am I going to do more with it? Do I want to, share it more, market it and all of that? And I started getting the prompting to do Bible cards, um, which I had had before, but I think I had just ignored, if I'm being honest. And then, obviously was thinking about it. I was then thinking, okay, is this going to be a business? Am I going to do some branding? Is there, the name? So many things, I have logos and all of that. I was just like, okay, no, it wasn't supposed to be this. It wasn't supposed to be a business. And I think I fought it for a good amount of months. But then, I went up to pick up my son, my first son, on his last day of school, asking him, so, you're on holiday now, summer holidays, what do you want to do for summer? And he was like, oh, I want to go to the park. I want to have play dates. He mentioned a couple of things. And the last thing he then said was, oh, I think we should do Bible cards. And I just stopped on the road, walking back to the car, thinking, he said, what now? And he said it again, yeah, I think we should create Bible cards. We can have pictures and it would show us what's written. I was like, okay, God, I hear loud and clear, I'm supposed to do this. And it was that decision to do the Bible cards that made me decide to take it into a business, because now I was beyond just the one book. There was now going to be Bible cards. And so I then started thinking, okay, am I happy with the name? The name is inspired by him as well. So I kept the name, changed the logo, my colors and all of those things. And because we've done it together, so even things like, oh, I would ask him about the scripture and he'd say, oh, I think we should have a girl doing X. And so we did that together, and he loves learning, scripture, and he likes to act it out. So even in the box of cards, there's a note from him about how he's spent all summer working on this with mom.
Yeah.
And actually, the reception for that was even better than the book. And I feel like that was just God's way of just telling me that, yeah, don't be scared.
Yeah.
Keep doing this, because that's still my bestseller till date. When I then shared that one out, like, the reception was really amazing. And um, the feedback from the kids as well, it's just so heartwarming. With kids, there's no sugarcoating, there's no trying to make it sound nice or not. So
Yeah.
the feedback, get videos of like parents recording their kids or writing back, and some of the reviews on my website are actually reviews from the kids. So the parents will say, okay, this is me saying I really like it, but my child said this. And for me, that really established the, okay, we're doing, beyond obviously God telling me to.
Yeah.
We're doing this, and there's a need and people want it, so why not?
Yeah. Can you put into words how God's encouraged you along the way? Obviously taking the first step with the book, and then as things have grown, and what's motivated you to continue?
To continue, first I'll say that a lot of the times we are more than what we think we are. So for me, there was a big identity walk, if I could put it
Mm.
that, because I feel like a lot of my identity was tied to being an accountant. right?
Mm.
I wanted to be an accountant. I am an accountant. And so if you ask me, I'm an accountant. That's what I would, if you ask me, I'm an accountant first before anything else.
Yeah.
But I feel like God was showing me that actually, or I'm all that I say that you are. And that's not a career, that's not a job, that's it's beyond all of that. That was one thing. Another thing was this brought out a whole different side of me being creative. It's not even a word that I would describe myself with, you know. And so even people would say, "Oh, you're so creative. You've done all this." And I'm like, "Really creative?" But God was walking that out. That light of the world scripture was one that would come to mind over and over again. And not just God is so merciful and kind because it wasn't just to me. Like I would have random people send me messages and include that. And I would just smile because I'm just saying, you don't know that what you're doing with that. The other thing as well is that in terms of us being created for much more, the Bible says that eyes have not seen, it hasn't come to the mind of man what God would do through us. And this journey is that for me because honestly, a few years before, 100% I'll tell you that I couldn't do this. I mean, it's almost like I wouldn't even permit myself to do it because I had limited myself in that way. But this has definitely shown me that you can. And so even with my boys, sometimes when they say to me, "Oh, mom, I can't do that," I'm like, actually, it's never can. You can try. You might not be great at it today. You can learn it. You can try again. There's
Yeah.
always more. And I feel like me even being able to really encourage them in that is because I've also then walked, or I'm still walking that walk. And for other projects he's then called me to do, that's my real life testimony. That's my what's the word I'm looking for? That's my it's like my reference point, right? It's my experience. It's an experience I've had with God.
Yeah.
So even the fear of sharing on Instagram, even the not knowing what an illustrator was, even
Yeah.
all of those things. And I've also met many people along the way now that I've also been able to help on their journeys, like people that, for instance, want to write a book or
Mm.
publish something. I had a lady the other day saying to me, she's had this idea, but watching from afar has encouraged her to actually go on and do her business.
Mm.
And she was like, "Oh, I've watched you for years." I was like, "Oh, really, me?"
Yeah.
And she's like, "Honestly, you don't know what your journey has done for me." And so she was really thanking me. I was like, "Oh, I didn't do anything." She was like, "Trust me, you just don't get it." So different things like that, just highlight to me like, "Oh, so what if I didn't do it? What if the children that are being blessed now are not being blessed by this?" Of course, there are many ways God can bless people. But what if, everyone has the light that they bring to the world? God has created each of us so uniquely and with abundant blessings and abundant giftings. Um, if we would look or if we would dare to believe, like I remember, when I was finally going to do the business, I was like, God, I'm daring to believe you now. And it's worth it. It's a faith walk, but it's worth it.
Yeah. Great. Amazing. I love it. And have you got any particular lessons or highlights you've learned along the way? Those are two flip sides, I guess, aren't they?
Mm,
Maybe can you name one of each, a lesson and a highlight?
yeah. Lesson. It's probably still closely linked, which is take a chance on yourself. You might not feel qualified or you might not feel equipped, but God is. And
Yeah.
if He says so, then, you can, it's bankable, basically. You can go with that, Yeah, He's the most powerful. I keep saying to my son, He's the most powerful, He's the most knowledgeable, He's the one that knows the beginning from the end. And so if He's calling you to something, just take it on. I feel like for a long time, I tried not to do it. And so I had an event, and I think that's now linked to my highlights so far. I had an event last summer,
Yeah.
which was based on, themed on the fruit of the spirit. And it was just where kids would come, learn about the fruit of the spirit, and just have a good time, basically like a party for them. But I was very nervous about it. And actually, for a long time, I sat on it, despite having started the business and all those things. I heard very early in the on during my, devotional time that I was supposed to do an event for kids where kids were supposed to have a good time and just learn about God. But I was just like, a party, or and I'm going to be teaching them. I don't teach kids. I only teach my kids. And I would ask her, like, who am I to put together something? And these are children. They're so impressionable, and all the things. And it took a friend of mine sending a message to me to say that God laid on her heart to do this, and He put me on heart, and can we do it together? That was the final. I had to do it. I had put it off for so long. God sends encouragement along the way. He knows all of us, His children. He knows the ones that be like, yep, let's do that. And the ones that need a little bit more. He's our Father. He knows us. He's created us. That event is my highlight because firsthand, I could see how, beyond the resources that we create, I could see how children, and also beyond my children light up and are learning and are basically like sponges, learning what it is, and obviously very curious, asking all these questions, and very excitable too when they then get what it is you're saying or what it is you're trying to teach them. Go on and apply those things as well, because I then had parents, for instance, that would message me after that and say, oh, I shared something about being faithful. Yes, being faithful. I was sharing about, it means being true to what it is that you say. So if you say you're going to do something, you follow through and do that. And some of the kids shared the things that they would try to follow through and do. But on the flip side, they were then using it on their parents. Where, for instance, if a parent promised something, they're then saying to a friend, well, you were not faithful with that. So that event for me last year was such a huge highlight because even beyond the day, there were still testimonies coming from it. And I
Yeah.
just keep asking myself, what if you didn't? What if you let fear stop you? Or what if you let doubt or busyness and all the other things stop you from doing these things? So that's my highlight, and also tied in that lesson. Just
Mm.
take a
Yeah,
bet
I
on
love it.
yourself. If God says, then you can trust Him, even if you don't trust yourself.
Yeah, that's such a good lesson because obviously the things we do have an impact, but we don't always get to see what that is. Whereas with an event like that, you get to glimpse behind the curtain a little bit and see
Yeah,
some of the impact on those children.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
I love that.
Okay.
Do you have a fun question for me? Now's the time.
Actually, I was wondering about why you started.
Okay.
What's your story? What's your why?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, so I have been involved in youth work for a long time and dabbled in a little bit of children's work along the way. Just before the pandemic, sort of 2018, 2019, felt that God was calling me to use some of my experience to encourage other youth leaders and children's leaders. And I was a bit the same. I was a bit like, me? What do I have to offer or share? And God just kind of showed me a glimpse back through my journey and all the different things I've been involved in, the experience I'd had and the things that I'd done. And I guess looking back, it seemed a lot broader than it had when I was in the journey doing it. So looking back, I was, oh, okay, right. Yeah, it all leads up to this point where actually I probably do have enough experience to share with other people because I've been involved in lots and lots of different types of youth and children's work in schools, in communities, in churches, lots of different types of contexts and events and projects and activities. So I pretty much can answer lots of different types of questions and can share my experience. Obviously, some things I've done have worked, some things haven't, and that experience can help other people. And I felt like a lot of people kind of lacking that person to encourage them and cheer them on in what they're doing, especially in youth and children's ministry. A lot of people are volunteers, some people are paid, but they're not necessarily supported by their church leader as much as they could be. Because church leaders are busy, it's not that they're lacking skill or doing it on purpose. They're just busy themselves, so they don't always have the time. They're not cheered on in their role either most of the time. So ministry can be hard, and so I wanted to do something. But similarly, I was kind of like, how can I do it? How can I do that by myself? Where do I even begin? And similar to your story with the event last year that you did, it actually took a friend messaging me and saying, I can help you with this. That was my encouragement to be like, okay, well, if it's not just me, then I don't have an excuse now.
Yeah. Yeah,
So
exactly that.
yeah, so a friend of mine helped me do all the charity registration paperwork and helped me gather some trustees and helped me with the vision document that we needed in the beginning. So yeah, that's kind of the the story of Ywk
Again,
Podcast, really.
yeah,
That God had been stirring my heart for a little while, but yeah, it took probably about a year to 18 months from that initial
yeah,
thought to actually
doing something.
appearing as something in the world and being something tangible.
Yeah,
And then obviously having launched that in early 2020, obviously didn't know the pandemic was coming, but actually it was a really timely moment in a lot of those first connections we made in those people's lives, because they were coming to move all their children's and youth work online, and everyone was like, how do we do this? And
yeah.
needed extra support. So kind of stepped in at quite a timely moment to help
Wow.
draw people together and help learn from each other and share things that were working and share things that weren't and troubleshoot problems. And that's kind of been the focus of Ywk Plus ever since, really. I never wanted it to be something where it was coming across like I've got all the answers, I'm going to help fix all of your problems.
Yeah.
It was more like, how can we draw everybody together, connect as many people as possible,
Right.
and help everybody share the things that have gone well, the things that haven't? How can we troubleshoot together? How can we bring everybody's experience in? Because although I've been involved in lots of things, I wouldn't call myself an expert either.
Well, you experienced. There's a lot you have to offer.
Yeah, I've failed at things, I've triumphed at things, and God stirred things along the way, but
Yeah.
there's definitely power in bringing people together and connecting people up and helping people feel like they're part of something bigger. And I think
Really
that's been the
powerful.
real heart behind it, really.
Nice.
So I want to unpack a little bit more, Lara. This is where I sort of ask what area of family, kids, youth ministry my interviewee is the most passionate about and why. And I think that I know the answer to this. I think it's probably going to be the representation stuff, and that was the reason behind wanting to put something out there.
Yeah.
And so let's unpack that a little bit more.
Yeah. Representation is still very important to me, and of course, it's the reason it started and all of that. But I've also found along the way when I started, the first book, which is the genesis of all this, has 5 kids of different skin colors deliberately, different types of hair, just to try and get a decent variety of kids included in there. And of course, they don't all look like my son. One does, but I was quite keen for him to not just see himself, but also see, you know, other colors as is the actual world that we live in.
Yeah.
And so the children that have read the book, use the cards, it's always very exciting to see that children see themselves in the products. That's why, for instance, I like doing things like pop-ups or like the event, and so I can actually see beyond their parents telling me, not that I don't believe them, but
Yeah.
see for myself, just how there was one particular girl that saw one of our posters actually, and the little girl has braids in the poster, and it says I radiate God's glory. And she just stared at it for such a long time. And her mom was then like, oh, she likes, collecting different pieces of art that she can put on her wall.
Mm.
Kept staring, and her mom was like, oh, why? Like, what is that? And she was like, she has braids. She has braids, mommy, just like me. It
Yeah.
was so emotional for me. And her mom was like, actually, yeah. And then her mom was like, oh, I've just tried to have a think about all the art we have. None of them have braids. And she loves braids in her hair. So of course representation is super important, and I want my son to see it. But I think as it evolves, I'm also keen for the products to be exciting. So I think my other struggle with some of the resources I found, and actually it's evolved really. What I found initially was I just found some of them quite boring, if I'm being honest. Very, almost like photocopied something there, photocopied there, and quality not always particularly great, not always the most exciting thing. So I think those two things now, if I was creating something, of course, my sons are my first reviewers. I'll test it with them, see how engaged they are with the resources, see whether they like it, see what they'll do with it. There's some products that I have samples of, but I've not released because within a week they weren't doing anything with it anymore. So I was like, okay, maybe not. And of course, they don't represent every single child, but those are the children I have. So
Yeah.
for me, especially as they're the reason in the first place, for me, they're usually my first, barrier or hurdle to get past. So representation is important, but I think for me, it's also for it to be vibrant and exciting and engaging, which is also why lots of the products are colorful
Yeah.
and durable as well. Because, like I said, I have two boys. So whether it's books, whether it's toys, it's important to me that they're durable and then can be passed on.
Mm.
So those are the things that for me, new resource, for instance, would hopefully embody, the representation, the fact that it's exciting, engaging, and that a child would be able to, let's say, pick up one of our books or toys and side by side with a non-Christian resource, still feel like, when I was younger, actually, the resources that I used to have that were Christian, I would rather pick up like any blighting book or, one of the other things that just look glossier and more attractive.
Yeah.
So I think those are the things that are important to me as I, carry on this journey.
Yeah. I love it. Thank you. And why do you think engaging children and young people with faith in God is important? And how do you hope some of your resources might help do that?
Yeah. Why? Well, I believe in God. I'm Christian, so of course I'm biased, I'm sure.
Yeah.
For me, my relationship with God is everything from knowing who I am, like, in terms of my identity, to I had a conversation recently with someone who was saying that, for him, yeah, it's fine, you can be Christian. He's not forced about he's raised in a Christian home, but he's not forced about being Christian. But he says when he has his kids, he's gonna ensure that they're raised Christian. And I was like, okay, why? And he said, well, the Christian values are so important on par across generations, across different fields, across different experiences. The Christian values would pull you through. The structure you get in terms, even just the fact that you're believing in God. And he was like, look, I know that you're going to tell me about your experiences with God and all that. So I'm not trying to get you to win me over. But he was saying that he thinks that even being non-Christian, those things are still valuable. And I'm
Mm.
sharing that because there are people that, for instance, will buy my resources that are not Christians actually. And when you ask them why, it's similar reasons that they give.
Mm.
A lot of people believe that there is something bigger than them,
Yeah.
whether it's Christian God, as they say, or not. We can debate that. But a lot of people believe that. A lot of people believe in the fruit of the Spirit, kindness, joy, things like that. A lot of people believe in a lot of the things that we believe in, but don't necessarily call it Christian. And so for me, of course, I'm Christian, and it's important for me to raise my kids as Christian because I believe in God, experience God over and over again. God has shown himself to be true to me, and I just can't imagine life without God. I can't imagine doing life. I can't imagine going through challenges. I can't imagine even when I don't have answers to my prayer, the fact that I can pray to God and release that
Mm.
is so powerful. And if I have that, I just can't see how I don't want to pass that on. So yeah, so that's why it's so important to me, to share my faith, and also important to do it from such an early age because I also know a lot of people that come to faith very late, later on in life,
Mm.
or like for me, for instance, when I was younger, I didn't pay attention to hearing from God. I would read my Bible. It just wasn't one of the things that was really highlighted to me in that way. That was later on in my life. And so things like that make me think actually, if I could hear God as a child, or if I knew that was God speaking to me, and you're not always going to hear like an audible voice, but if you can sense God, if you know that this is how God is leading you, all of those things are just so valuable, whether it's in exams, whether it's in a quarrel between two children, how you behave, whether it's in
Mm.
people that are bullies. There are just so many instances that even little children face that they can, apply their Christian values, or a relationship with God is so important. And of course, the more as with anything, the more time you spend with God, the more experiences you have with Him, it just strengthens that relationship. And so just the thought of having that as a foundation is just so powerful to me that yeah, I just think for me it's non-negotiable. Of course, I'm sure people would say I'm biased, but I think it's important from a foundation, from however young they are. I would like children to have, same relationship with God. And sometimes it's easy to think, oh, they're little, and so maybe they don't know, or they won't get it, or whatever reasons we might give. But what I've found and what I'm finding is that children are like sponges. They really absorb whatever it is you give to them. Whatever is around them is what they absorb. And of course, also, I know for my kids, they like exciting things, colorful things. And so if my resources are attractive enough, so if they saw my book on a bookshelf, they would happily pick that up. And then, of course, we know the power in the word. Then for me, I'm happy. And also, if I can, go back to how, they absorb everything. My younger son, when he was 2, I was giving him a shower once, and he was saying something that I couldn't quite place. And he was walking, up and down in the bath. And I was just like, it's the bath. It's dangerous. Let's not do this. And I felt like I should listen to what he was saying. And what he was saying was, I'm the light of the world. Remember, you've commanded me to be strong. And because he kept doing the strong and brave, do not be afraid. The Lord your God will be with you. And he was then walking wherever you go, was the part where he was walking.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh my God. And my older son comes in. My husband was in, my older son. And he was like, Mom, what's wrong? I was like, listen. And he was like, oh, good job. I was like, did you know that he knew that? He was like, well, I'm always, he acts out, he's very animated. So he was like, oh, I'm always doing this. So maybe I'm sure. I was like, yeah, I'm sure that's where he got him. But he's 2. He's 2. And in that moment, I was obviously very proud, but also a little bit scared, because I was just like, so that means that literally whatever you expose them to, good or bad,
Mm.
from this age has such an impact on them. And then he then told me that, oh, he'll show me the card. And of course, at that age, he doesn't know he can't read the text, but he knows the pictures.
Mm.
And so he could, he saw the picture, he picked the card, he pointed to it. And for me, that's what I'm trying to do. Use them to God in a simple, exciting way, with resources they can actually use and can relate to, can obviously see themselves in. And hopefully it's a tool that, the older parents, the older siblings, teachers can use as well with them to share their faith, share, these Christian values as well. So that's how I'm hoping that, the resources would be useful to help that journey, or, help develop the relationship with God.
Yeah. Yeah. Obviously, we have a range of people listening. Some people might be thinking, oh, I really want to check out Curious Berries for me, or for my kids, or as gifts for kids that I know, or for use within ministry with kids or groups that we might volunteer or work with. So how can people find Curious Berries? Where can people buy your stuff?
So
Where can we access it, Lara?
We have a website, which is www.curiousberries.com. We're also on Instagram, we're on Facebook, we deliver worldwide. So yeah, most of our orders are via our website.
Great. And how can people get involved with what you do? Obviously, they can follow you on Instagram, they can buy stuff from you.
Yeah.
How can they get involved from afar? What can we pray for you and for your ministry project?
Yeah. How people can get involved? Well, I'm trying to get it in the hands of more people, more parents, basically whoever needs it. And so that's one thing that I'm working on. So for me, one of my goals this year is schools, churches, like children's churches. There'll be useful resources that they can use with the kids. That's good. The other way that I find really, really powerful is, with social media, when you share pictures, videos, it might seem like one moment, or it might seem like, oh, it's something little, but somehow I always just get messages from parents saying, "Oh, I saw you did that. I'm going to try with my child."
Mm.
Or, "Oh, I tried this with my child as well." And that's sometimes from one picture or one video. So I always encourage people to, share their pictures, share their videos. Some people obviously don't want to include their kids. Some don't mind. Some, don't want to include their face. However, we can spread the word ultimately. And the other thing as well is I'm just also open to um, suggestions. So some of my products today have come from suggestions. So meeting somebody, for instance, at an exhibition, they ask me, "Oh, do you have this product? Or do you have it in this way?" And I'm like, "Oh, actually, I haven't thought about that." So suggestions always welcome because obviously I'm always thinking of something. There's always product ideas bouncing around. So yeah, definitely welcome suggestions as well because ultimately it's to help the kids. So if your kids would appreciate some type of resources that maybe it's not available yet or not enough of it, then yeah.
Yeah, great. And lastly, last question, what advice or encouragement would you give for other people like you listening? Maybe people who have heard a little whisper of something they should do, or who are already kind of going down the journey of trying to get something published,
Yeah.
or who have a side business like you.
Yeah, yeah. My advice would be if you feel like God's leading you to do something, as simple as it might sound, just do it. Take a chance on yourself. I remember someone said to me one time, "What's the worst that could happen?" So you share this book and nobody likes it. Worst case scenario. Okay, you tried. You did it. Nobody likes it. Your son would have it at least. And you've done something, you've learned something along the way. You now know what an illustrator is, you know what an editor is. You've
Yeah,
worked with printers, you now know the color skill, all those things, you've learned a lot of things. We also know that God is an amazing, amazing father. So somehow along the way, he always still sends help. Help can be in the form of your kids, friends, partners. It can come in many forms. It can come from an encouragement from your devotional time. Sometimes something might jump out at you and you're thinking, "Oh wow, okay, this is the extra push I needed for today." And it's usually a journey. So it's as we know, as I'm finding, it's not like, you've done one thing and it's like, "Yeah, you've done it and that's it." Usually it's the start of many things.
yeah.
Like I said today, my Bible cards are currently the bestseller. If I didn't do the book, I wouldn't have done the Bible cards.
Mm,
If I didn't do the book, I also wouldn't have the characters that people now love so much in the Bible cards as well and in my other products. So in a lot of ways, I feel like the book was my entry. It wasn't necessarily the end. So take a chance on yourself and on God. If God said, trust him, even if you don't trust yourself, trust him. He's able. I've heard someone say if he ordered something, then he will pay for it. Yeah.
yeah.
That would be my advice.
The amazing thing is you will never see the full picture. God's the only one who does. So all we can do is be obedient to what we're being asked to do, and know that somehow that will have a bigger impact. We
Yeah.
don't know.
We
Like
don't
you
know
say, we
what
don't
or
always know
when.
where that's going to lead
Yeah.
for us or for anybody who is impacted by that decision that we make
Yeah.
through that obedience. But God does. And there's a reason why he's asking you to do something.
Yeah, yeah. And I think the other thing as well that again I ask myself time and time again, obviously now sitting on this side, is what if you didn't?
Mm,
Then my son might not be saying memory verses now, maybe, who knows? All the other people that have been impacted by it might not be. So I always think about, I still say to my sons that imagine if all of us shone as bright as we could. God has created all of us with so many different gifts. Like, you're a footballer, you're a cook, you're a writer, you're an artist, you're an accountant, you're so many things, and everyone is doing amazing. Like I was saying to him, like, we enjoy music today that people play. I'm not skilled with that music, but I enjoy it. Imagine if that person didn't give that to the world, and we're not able to watch tennis. They didn't give that to and different people haven't just come into the fullness of what it is that their giftings are. Then the world would be really dull and boring. And so that's one other thing that encourages me. I can enjoy your talent and your gift and your contribution to the world as much as you can enjoy mine and the next person. But all of us then need to walk in the fullness of what it is that we've been called to. And if we don't try, we wouldn't know, because there's some things you try and you make a decision that, yep, that's not for me. And then you go on to the next. But at least you know, and that's as powerful, because it could always just be in your head, what if I did this, or what if I tried this? And you might beat yourself up about that, but actually you might have tried it and it might not have been for you. So
yeah, I love it. And I just want to quickly go back to something you said at the beginning about the fact that God always has more in store for us. So sometimes we pigeonhole ourselves and think, this is it, or that's not me, when God is the one who knows us better than we know ourselves. To know that actually, there is more that he wants to lead us into. There is more that he wants to show us. There is more that he wants to draw us deeper into. And that's probably a really good place to finish. There is more always, that God wants to teach us and show us, and allow us to see about ourselves and about the world and about who he is.
Yeah, absolutely.
I just want to say a huge thank you to you for being obedient, for doing Curious Berries, for bringing it to us, bringing it out into the world. And I really hope that some of our listeners will check out your store, and I'm sure they're going to love your stuff as much as I do, and will want to buy at least some of it. So hopefully we can help spread the word a little bit about Curious Berries and help some more children be impacted by it. And I'm sure that as well, people will be impacted by the things that you've said and your journey and some of the things that you've learned along the way as well. So I just want to say a huge thank you for coming on our podcast today, Lara.
Thank you. Thanks so much for having me, for the opportunity to share and journey memory lane. As well. It's always important, even for me, I'm sitting on this side because there's some things God is calling me to now. And again, I'm like, can I do it? But even sharing this actually is reminding me, like, what are you saying? Do it. So no, thanks for having me. Thanks for sharing. Thanks for doing this work as well. It's so needed, so amazing. And like you say, even if you don't have all the answers, the collective of, different people, journeys, experiences is, we don't share enough, basically. So this is so important. It's also thank you. And thanks for being a great host, making me feel comfortable.
Thanks, Lara. Thank
you.
So thank you everybody who's been listening today, and we hope you've really enjoyed this episode. Obviously you can leave comments if you're listening on Spotify, or if you're listening on YouTube, you can leave a comment there as well. If you want to ask Lara anything else, I can pass on questions. Do check out her website, Curious Berries, and hope you've enjoyed listening to the podcast and you've received something from it. Hopefully something sticks and something's inspired you today. And see you on the next one. See you later.